Try that. Can you hear us now, Councillor Townsend?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. It's 2 o'clock. I'd like to call this meeting to order. I'm Deputy Mayor Tom Hutchison. I'm the Chair of the Committee of Adjustment, and welcome. This is the July the 8th, 2025 Committee of Adjustment meeting. And we do have a quorum. Member Townsend is joining us virtually. So for this meeting, we're using both audio and video. This meeting is being recorded and will be posted on the Westgrey website at www.westgrey.com. The technology for this meeting is being managed by the Westgrey staff. Anybody online, please refrain from clicking buttons throughout the meeting unless prompted. And before we continue, I'm going to ask Communications Coordinator Ms. Noble to provide an overview for some of the other key points for the meeting. Ms. Noble, please.
Thank you. And through you, Chair Hudson. Before I begin, at any point, if you get disconnected, you can dial 1-647-558-0588 and enter the ID for this meeting, which is 891-5626-2480. For members of the public, if you require any technical assistance, please send a chat message to Westgrey Communications and I will attempt to assist you.
Thank you. And item number 2 is the purpose of the meeting, and I'm going to ask CBO Shipwreck if you could provide an overview on that, sir.
Thank you for that, Chair. Just apologize for our manager of planning not being able to attend today. He's at a conference, so I'm filling in for him for the app for this meeting, and so go a little easy on me if you can. But today's meeting will cover 3 applications. Application number A03 2025 for 474789 Townsend Lake Road. And application number A04 for 2025 for 473451 Camp Oliver Road. And application A05 2025 122019 Concession 8.
Thank you. And we will take it easy on you. Anyways, item number 3 on the agenda is the disclosure of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof. Does anybody on the committee have anything to declare? And if not at this time, if one should arise during the meeting, of course, you can declare at that time. So seeing none, I'm going to go on to item number 4. That's the approval of the minutes. 4.1 is the minutes of the Committee of Adjustment hearing held June 3rd, 2025. Could we get a mover, please? Thank you, Member Eccles. And seconder, please. Member Noon. Okay. Comments, questions from any of the committee members? Errors, omissions? I'll check online. Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor of receiving them? Thank you. All members in favor, none opposed. That motion has carried. Moving right along, that's going to take us into item number 5. It's our first application of the day. That's application number A03 2025-474789 Townsend Lake Road. 5.1 is going to be a report from the planning, or from our planning staff, which is going to be CBO Shipwreck today. And if you could please review or just provide your notes on B11, AO3 2025, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So this application, AO3 2025 Barlow, submitted by Design Plan Services, is for an application to adjust the maximum floor area permitted for an accessory apartment and to increase the number of bedrooms in that same apartment from 2 to 3. Our current zoning bylaw has a maximum square footage of 93 meters squared, and they like to increase that to 154 meters squared and increase the number of bedrooms in that same apartment from 2 bedrooms to 3. Our current zoning bylaw only permits 2 bedrooms at a maximum of 93 meters squared total. The accessory apartment is connected to the existing dwelling through an attached jointly used garage. So there's an apartment, the main house on one side, the garage in the middle, and then an accessory apartment attached to the side of it. The property is designated Inland Lakes and Shoreline Settlement Area in the Grey County Official Plan. We received no concerns or no comments from any of the commenting agencies, and there have been no comments received by the public as of June 20th, 2025. The planning staff reviewed the application and determined that it meets all the requirements of the Planning Act and meets all the minor variance tests, the 4 tests, and planning staff recommend approval of the minor variance.
Okay, thank you very much. 5.2, verbal comments. So there's 2 parts to this here. The first one's going to be the committee members under 5.2.1. And once we've done that, then we'll turn it over to the public for any comments. So committee members, do you have anything any questions, comments? Yes, Member Eccles, go ahead, sir.
Just one. With the new planning, whatever, from the province, if this, which allows 2 residences on 1 lot type of thing, had this not been connected and it was a standalone resident, we wouldn't be here with a minor variance. Would I be correct in saying that?
Through you, Chair. So no, technically, the province allows for up to 3 residential units on a fully serviced lot. So in this case, this lot on Townsend Lake Road is not serviced by municipal services. So that planning requirement doesn't apply to this property.
But in the rural area, are they not saying that you can have 2 residences on a single lot?
Through the provincial planning and through the official plan for Grey County, there is provisions to allow additional residential units, but it's not as of right. So it's not automatic. It would be up to council to include that in their zoning bylaw, which can be done. But currently our zoning bylaw does not allow more than 1 residential unit on a lot. So if this was a standalone unit, they would be applying for a secondary unit on a property rather than applying for adjustments to the apartment.
Yeah.
But they would still require an amendment.
Yeah, they require the amendment. Okay.
Any other comments or questions? Member Shea, go ahead, please.
Sure, I'm just seeking a little bit of clarity. So there's 2 units, and they're increasing the permitted bedrooms from 2 to 3. I'm surprised that we were capped at 2 bedrooms to begin with. That's just a comment. So this will be distributed 2 bedrooms per 1 apartment and 1 bedroom per the other apartment, and the overall footage is the whole thing? No.
So no, through you, Chair. So the minimums or the maximum area and the number of bedrooms applies to the apartment only. So the main house could have 10 bedrooms. That's not regulated under our zoning bylaw. It's only the apartment that's regulated, so that these 3 bedrooms will be in the apartment.
Okay. Thank you. Good. Any follow-up? No. Other comments or questions before we turn it to the public and agents? Okay, seeing none, we'll turn the application over. And again, I'm going to give Ms. Noble to provide anybody attending virtually how they can participate. And if you could let us know if anybody has any comments or questions on this application, Ms. Noble?
Members of the public joining virtually wishing to participate in this portion of the meeting may do so in one of two ways. If you have joined via phone, press star 9 to raise your hand. This will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, star 9 can also be used to lower your hand. If you have joined virtually, you can either raise your hand by clicking either the blue or yellow hand icon located in the bottom corner of your screen, or by sending a chat message to Westgray Communication.
Nobody online? Okay, thank you. Is there anybody in attendance today in the chamber here that would like to make a comment or have any questions on this? Well? Oh, okay, seeing none. Then that concludes the comment period for this application. Takes us to 5.3, and that's decision. So what direction would the committee like to take with this application? Member Eccles, yes, go ahead, sir.
I move the recommendation as presented by staff.
Okay, thank you. And Member Hutchison, you're going to second that, sir? Thank you. Is everyone clear on the recommendation? It's been circulated. It's on the line here. Comments or questions? We'll call the vote. Okay. You have a question? Oh, okay, call the vote. All those in favor, sorry. Thank you. I see all members in favor, none opposed. That motion has carried. And I'm going to go over to CBO Shipwreck. If you could just provide what would be the next steps under 5.4, please.
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. So once the application has met all their, the planning staff will issue a letter to all commenting agencies providing for a notice of decision. If no appeals are received, and all the conditions are completed, then the application will be complete and they'd be permitted to complete their building permit process.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, that takes us to item 6. It's application number A04-2025-473451 Camp Oliver Road. And our first report is going to be 6.1. It's going to be a report from our planning staff, which is covered today by CBO Shipwreck. And if you could please read your comments on A04-2025.
Thank you, through you, Chair. So this is application AO4-2025 for Halloway and O'Hearn. It is for amendment to the interior side minimum for an accessory building. So this is it's just a residential accessory building or structure. They want to reduce that required setback of 15.2 meters or 49.9 feet to 7.62 meters or 25 feet. So there's provided some conditions there. The address for this one is 473-451 Camp Oliver Road. The property is designated rural and hazard in the Grey County official plan. It does have some aggregate resource areas, significant woodlands, and other wetland constraints. The planning ecologist has determined that an environmental impact study is not required. And we have received no concerns from our commenting agencies. And that we've had no comments received from the public as of June 23rd, 2025. Planning staff have determined that the application meets all 4 requirements of the minor variance tests and recommend approval of this application.
Thank you, CBO Shipwreck. 6.2, verbal comments. So again, there's 2 parts to this one. First one's by the committee members under 6.2.1. And once we conclude that, then we will turn it to the public or agents under 6.2.2. So under 6.2.1, any comments from any committee members on this application? Check online, okay, seeing none. And we are going to turn it to the public. And again, I'm going to go to Ms. Noble. If you can just provide an overview to anybody attending virtually, how they can participate. And if you'd let us know if anybody would like to speak to the application.
If you have joined via phone, press star 9 to raise your hand. This will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, star 9 can also be used to lower your hand. If you have joined virtually, you can either raise your hand by clicking either the blue or yellow hand icon located in the bottom corner of your screen, or by sending a chat message to Westgray Communication.
Right, nobody's has anything to say virtually, we'll turn it to anybody in attendance today. Is anybody in attendance here that would have any comments or questions on this application? Okay. Seeing none, then we will conclude the comment period and we will go to the decision by the committee. So what direction would the committee like to take with this application under 6.3? Member Forrester, what do you got there, sir?
Move the recommendations as laid out in the planner's report.
Thank you very much. Is there a seconder, please? Member Hutchinson, thank you. Is everyone clear on the recommendation? Any comments or questions on the recommendation? Seeing none, we'll call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands, please. So all members are in favor. There's none opposed. That motion has carried. That takes us to item 6.4. Again, I'm going to go to CBO Shipwreck to provide what would be the next step, sir.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to the last application, the planning staff will send out notices to all commenting agencies and all properties within the required setback. If no appeals are heard within or received within the appeal period timeframe, then the application will be considered complete. And when all conditions have been fulfilled, then the applicant can move forward with their building permit process.
Thank you, sir. So moves us right along. This takes us to the third and final application on today's agenda. Application number A05 2025-122019, concession 8. 7.1 on the agenda will be the report from the planning staff. Again, I'm going to ask CBO Shipwreck to give us an overview under application A05 2025. CBO Shipwreck, please.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Chair. This application is for A05 2025 New Life Mills submitted by Dom Construction. This application is to amend the MDS or minimum distance separation setbacks for a new barn on the proposed barn, livestock barn on this property. So there are two dwellings within the required minimum distance separation area. Dwelling 1 to the west is uninhabited. It's an old house that is falling down, but under the MDS legislation, we are required to still count that house in the MDS calculation, regardless of whether it's habitable or not. And then there's another dwelling on another property to the south that would be within the setback, and that property is inhabited or has potential to be inhabited. Address is 122019 concession 8. The property is designated as agricultural hazard in the Grey County official plan, and the County of Planning Ecologists again and SVCA have no concerns. We received no comments of concern except for West Grey Fire provided some access driveway requirements. Under the new building code, there is some requirements for barns and for fire access, but that will be completed through the building permit process. And there have been no public comments received as of June 20th, 2025. Again, this is a minor variance, and planning staff reviewed it to determine and have determined that it meets the 4 tests for minor variance. And the required setbacks change for each dwelling just because one house is slightly closer or a little closer than the other one, so we have to reduce them differently for each dwelling. And planning staff reviewed it and determined that they meets the requirements of the Planning Act, and that they approve the recommend it to be approved by the committee.
Thank you, sir. So that'll move us to 7.2 verbal comments. And again, just for anybody that joined us just recently online, there is 2 parts to it. 7.2.1 is committee members' comments, followed by 7.2.2, which is the applicant, agent, and members of the public comments. So under 7.2.1, committee members, do you have any comments or questions regarding this application? Member Shea, go ahead, sir.
Just curious if you know during the planning application process, if the applicant was made aware of the MDS requirements and if they didn't consider adjusting the location by a few feet to satisfy the MDS requirements?
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. So I did have this application we received for a building permit application from Dom Construction. So I had my staff had multiple conversations. We worked at trying to find new locations or moving the location of the barn. It just, because there are some existing barns on the property already and how those barns need to connect with each other, this was really the only location that would work for the applicant, was my understanding. And with the minor revision to the MDS setbacks, the planning staff didn't have any concerns with the small adjustment.
Good. Any other comments, questions from committee members? Okay, seeing none, we're going to conclude that. We'll go to 7.2.2. This is public comments, agents' comments, etc. Ms. Noble, if you could just provide an overview, anybody attending virtually, how they can participate, and if you let us know if anybody would like to speak to the application.
If you have joined via phone, press star 9 to raise your hand. This will let us know that you would like to speak. Alternatively, star 9 can also be used to lower your hand. If you have joined virtually, you can either raise your hand by clicking either the blue or yellow hand icon located in the bottom corner of your screen, or by sending a chat message to Westgrade Communication.
Okay. Hi there, how are you? Can you hear us?
Hi there, are you referring to me?
Yeah, yes. Did you want to, yes, I'm assuming you're an agent or you want to speak to this application?
I would like to speak, thank you. My name's Olivia
Okay.
Cozella, so I'm speaking on behalf of the Cozella Family Farm. And I just have a few questions and I'm hoping the planning committee might be able to answer. So when I reviewed the diagram that indicated the property, I'm just wondering, how did you determine where the derelict residence was on the property?
CBO Shipwreck, I don't, do you have that response to that?
Yes, thank you through you, Chair. So we use the GIS software through the Grey County, and we do measurements as well as the designer that submitted the application. They would have done the same calculations. I'm
Oh,
not sure. I'm sorry, I'm not sure if they took any on-site measurements or not. Most of the time, we just do it through the GIS.
Not that I'm aware of. When I used Google Earth just to cross-reference the locations that were submitted. And when I looked closer, I found that the property that's indicated as the house is actually the location of the barn. And the house is actually much closer. So I'm wondering if there's any consideration around that. Given that you've mentioned it's 150 feet within the MDS amount, I think the house is actually going to be much closer. Now, you've described it as a house that's falling down. I don't really think that's an accurate description. Yes, it is uninhabited. It's a century stone home that I plan to renovate and fix up. And over the past few years, there's been a new roof and new eaves troughs put on it, as well as masonry work done to it. So while the project is slow going, it doesn't mean the house is going to fall down. The house will be fixed up. And I also have intentions to use the property for recreational purposes, where I'll be camping on the property. So with that in mind, I do object to this change in the MDS. I don't think we should. The MDS is outlined by the province for a reason. The municipality has a duty to uphold this. I mean, the municipality is also liable to uphold this. So I think that, has the due diligence been done if the locations are not accurately indicated on the application? Can you answer? Have you done your due diligence?
CBO Shipwreck. And please bear with us, ma'am, because our planner's missed away at a conference. CBO Shipwreck's filling in, so may not be able to get as in depth into.
Okay.
That, just so you know, but Carl is filling in. But anyways, Mr. Shipwreck, do you have a response, sir?
Yeah, thank you through you, Chair. So I personally have not done a site visit. I had multiple conversations with the contractor as well as with the property owner for the application. We did reviews of the aerial photography. And the aerial of that, it's the type A. So I don't know if we can bring up that application or that aerial photo, but I'm looking at the aerial photo here. I don't see any other buildings that would be closer to the proposed construction than the one that,
You're right. It is difficult to see, having not been to the property. I can understand it being missed. The property you see there is clearly the barn. I can submit my much clearer Google Maps photo if you'd like to see it. I'm happy to share it so you can see the difference. I don't have an exact difference. Yeah, the quality of the photo is very difficult to see. I'm not sure why the quality would be so poor when there's much better photos available on Google Maps. And also, the document you sent isn't accessible at all. The contrast with the line where the NDS is indicated is very difficult to see. So I would think that doesn't meet the AODA standards set out by the province. Municipalities have to be very careful about accessibility when they're delivering public documents. So I just want to flag that for you as well. A lot of people might not be able to even read or see it. Have you thought about that? Have you checked this document for AODA compliance? Do you know what AODA compliance is?
Yes, ma'am, we will have to stay to the application and we will get a response to that, but
Thank you.
anyways, Mr. Shipwreck, do you have a response to her question?
yeah, again, we use the Grey County GIS mapping for all our dimensioning and for our aerial photography. That's the application or the aerial from the GIS mapping is shown on the screen right now. And you can see the circle dwelling one there that we've shown on that drawing. And the proposed property is to the east there, the highlighted area in purple. So whether that circle one is a dwelling or not, I'm not sure, but there is no buildings that would be closer to that purple property line.
You're right. This is different than what was shared with me. What was sent out to us as a public notice looks slightly different than this, and the circle is much larger, the dwelling, than what's indicated on what was shared publicly. So I just want to point that out. So on the document that was shared with me that shows the measurements of the MDS, it's actually different than that. Would you like to share what was sent out publicly?
Yeah, so the application and the drawing with the circles on it that shows the dwelling and the barn, that's the application that we received from the applicant as part of their application, and that's what we send out. Again, when we receive a document, the reason why that document may not be AODA compliance because we didn't create the document. So when we send it out, it may not be AODA compliant. But looking at the aerial photography, that the drawing that was on the screen earlier, yeah, see, this is the application. The one on screen now is the application that was, or part of the application that was received.
Okay, yes, this is what I received. Thank you for sharing that. Now that I can see it more clearly, I'd also like to point out that there is a drilled well at that dwelling. I don't see it indicated on your copy.
There may be a drilled well. MDS requirements are for odor and nuisance. It's not in relation to water quality. So.
Okay.
Anything further, ma'am?
Well, I'd just like to point out that you consider that the intensification of agriculture has real impacts for the neighboring properties and residents who've lived in this area for many, many years. It changes the potential future use of the property. Like I mentioned, I do want to restore this century home. I do want to use the property for recreational reasons. I'm sure the Jacobs, they've lived there for as long as I can remember. They've been on that property. And you said maybe it won't be inhabited. No, that's not true. That family has lived there for many, many years. And I'm sure they intend to pass that farm down to their children. So there's implications for them as well. And I ask that you consider those implications. There's also implications for wetlands. There's wetland property around. I'm not sure if an environmental assessment has been done as part of this, but I would hope that there has been, because there could be significant impacts for neighboring wetlands as well. So if you haven't had the time to consider these, I'd ask that you take some time now to have a think and think about how it's going to impact the people who live in the area. And thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Now, is there anybody else virtually? Ms. Noble? Before I turn it to the application, okay. Now, is there anybody in attendance who'd like to speak to the application? For me? Oh, sorry. Well, one moment, sir. Do you have a statement?
Yes, sorry, thank you, through you, Chair. So just for a couple points of clarification. So the MDS requirement was what we're varying today. That MDS requirement, again, is in relations to the province's requirement for MDS setbacks, which is in relation to odor control and odor nuisance to surrounding property owners to barns. The fact that the building, or we interpreted, or it was submitted through the application as derelict, again, it was calculated. We review that, whether it's a brand new house versus a derelict. We use the same calculation. There was no difference in our review that was dependent on the fact that it was a derelict house. It would have been reviewed in the exact same way if it was a brand new house. In relation, there is another building that we're also varying the setback to, and that building is inhabited currently. So there's no difference between those two. So that really wasn't considered in the application process. As far as the environmental controls, they are required to do nutrient management strategies and requirements for all those types of things through the building permit process. And that would all be required to be submitted at the time of application.
Yeah, thank you. Do you have another question, ma'am, before I turn it? Okay, thank you. Now, anybody in attendance, if you'd like to speak to this application, to ask you to come up to the podium or the desk. I believe there's a sheet there you can sign in. You just have to go up here and we'll get you. Yeah, we'll get to the, just got to get the mic on, and then we're going to ask you to state your name and your municipality that you're from for the record, please. Should be a gray button there, gray button on the box there. And just state your name and the municipality, and the floor is yours.
Paul Quazella, and I guess Normanby Township, West Gray Municipality. I'm here in objection to the noted application for the chicken barns. And I'd just like to know just to reinforce what my sister had commented on. The derelict dwelling is, by my calculation, is approximately 100 feet closer to the, will shorten that, is it MDS distance by approximately 100 feet. The house is 100 feet from where that basic circle is drawn to the east. So your separation of, or your distance of 150 feet, the reduction of that MDS, I would estimate that to be more like 250 feet. And more concerns about this, like certainly what my sister noted is that, you know, I'm not objecting to the use of these lands for agriculture, but what she said about this intensive agriculture. So when these barns were built years ago, like when a corporation comes up and, you know, has a future plan to use a site for a certain use, like in the planning process, is there some kind of mechanism that, you know, gauges their future plans or future expansions? Because in my mind, when you allow these intensive agriculture units, whether it's cattle or chicken or pig or anything, to be built close to residents, there's no going back from that. And like she said, that changes this area. Like who wants to move here in 50 years and be close to, I don't know, 4 chicken barns, 2 manure storages, and maybe a proposed incinerating plant all within like half a mile of where the Jacobs residence is and our farm residence is, the derelict farm residence. And for the future use of it, like even valuations of like, yes, maybe these farms, maybe this doesn't affect certain usages of that, but like I said, if you were looking to buy a recreational farm property or your children were in 50 years and you had the choice of these ones with all this intensive agriculture on it, right close to these residences, or say something further back, you would choose elsewhere. And I'm just, I guess a question on that note, like, is there not some kind of mechanism that says, well, if these companies, whoever buys these properties, if they're planning on doing this on a farm property, is there not something to say, well, these have to be built double the distance, double this MDS distance from residences, or triple? Like some of these barns you see are built at the back of the property, not at the front of the property, not close to where the residences are. They're built as far away to, you know, to minimize the smell, to minimize the noise, to minimize anything to do with the other properties. I'm just wondering if there is a mechanism in the municipality to deal with that.
I'm gonna go for an answer from CBO Shipper for that one. Sure. Go ahead, sir.
So the MDS calculation is based on the type and number of animal units that are being proposed in the barn. So every farm operation is different. If there's, 100 chickens or versus 10,000 chickens, obviously that barn is going to be a different location or a requirement to be. So some barns you will see that are very far back on the property. Likely they're back there because they're required by their MDS calculation, whatever. If they have a pig operation, that with a large number of animals, that barn is going to require a very large setback from a neighboring property. But that setback requirement is based on the type of animal and the number of animals in that barn, and how the nutrients are being stored, whether they're indoor or outdoor. That is a factor on the calculation. So usually the farm operation, in my experience, will put it where they're required to put it based on the MDS calculation. So if you see a farm that's very far back, they're doing that because they have to do it based on their MDS requirement.
So another question on that. So say these proposed barns, everything goes through as they are here now. How does that impact, say, if my sister chooses to build a house on that property or renovate, or I choose to build an animal barn, or we choose to drill a new well? How is that going to affect our future use of the property?
Through you, Chair. So there is no barn to barn setback requirement in the zoning bylaw. There's only a barn to property line setback that you would have to meet. Again, depending on the type of animal units that are you would be proposing in your barn, you would be required to set back to neighboring houses, not to neighboring barns. So you would be under the same requirement to meet the MDS as this property is to a neighboring property dwellings. House to house, there's no setback requirements. Again, it's just house to property line. So, and wells are not regulated through the municipality, they're regulated through the Ministry of the Environment. So I can't speak specifically to what their requirements are, but in general practice, they don't have any mandatory required setbacks that I'm aware of for wells.
Okay, thank you.
Further?
I think that's good. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Could you, there's the sheet over here. Is there a sheet just to sign in, sir? If I just get you to sign that for the record, please, I appreciate it. You can see it too short.
Hi there. I have one more question when you have a moment, please.
Yeah, we're just gonna get, we'll just get the next gentleman that's waiting, and then I'll circle back. Good. And welcome, sir. We just get you to state your name and the municipality you represent, and again, you can sign that sheet, and the floor is yours, and then I will come back to you, ma'am. You're live. Go ahead, sir.
Matt Jacobs. I live in the house across the road. I noticed on your application form, you have two circles, a red one and a purple one. Could you explain the difference?
I'll go to the CBO shipwreck, please.
Yeah, so the red line is to a type A. So it is shown on, again, that application. There's a little note there. So the red line is 1,624 feet, which is the required setback to a type A. For 2025 expansion of 55,000 birds for barn 4, due to being less than 3 years since barn 3. So purple line is to a type A after 3. So through the MDS legislation, it's a little confusing, but the MDS calculation is different depending on whether you're building a new barn versus an expansion. So the calculation that you're allowed, so if you build a new barn on a property, so it's a vacant property, brand new use, you're building a new barn, you're required to meet a certain MDS setback. So, but the legislation allows you a different calculation if you're expanding an existing operation, which technically they're doing on this property because they already have an existing barn and they're expanding that operation, regardless of whether it's in the same barn or a different barn, that doesn't matter. So in this case, but the legislation requires you're only allowed to use that expansion calculation if there's 3 years difference between when you built your brand new barn versus the expansion of that property. So in this case, the red line is the new number. If they waited 3 years from the time the original barn was built to build the new barn, they would only be required to meet the purple line, which means they wouldn't have needed to apply for a minor variance at all. So they could wait the 3 years, and I believe it's been a year since that original barn was built. So that, or
6 months.
yeah, it was time from the building permit application. So it's been approximately a year. So from that time to the time they would have to wait another 2 years. And if they waited the full 2 years, they could build the barn without a minor variance application. In this case, they wanted to build it sooner than the 3 years. So they're required technically under the legislation to meet the red line, which means they need the minor variance. That's the difference between the two lines.
So when they built the third barn, which is included in here, was that considered an expansion then?
On the application, barn 3 and 4 are both expansions, yes.
But barn 3 is already in commission, has been commissioned, and is full of chickens.
Yes, again, it's when we're dealing with MDS, it's the total number of animals. So every time you expand, you're adding more animals, which expands the radius, right? So if your first barn has 1,000 chickens in it, you may only need to be 100 feet. If your second barn is another 100 chickens, so that now you have 200 total chickens, you're expanding your radius. So when you build the third barn, maybe 300 chickens, now you've expanded the radius even more. So in the case when the third barn was built, their expansion again didn't need a minor variance setback because there were less than the distance required to the house. So they would have met the MDS requirement with 3 barns of total chickens. But when they add the fourth barn, they're expanding their livestock operation that much more. And it's a total calculation on all 4 barns that makes them, now that radius is expanded even more. So when you add that fourth barn, now it starts to incorporate your property across the road as well as the other lady and gentleman's property next door, right? So again, if they're adding a 5th barn, if they chose to in the future, then again, that radius would be even bigger. And then they would have to come back and apply for a minor variance that might adjust that from 150 down to, like, they might have to reduce it like 300, right? Like, so it's the total number of animals increases the radius again and again and again as they expand. I'm not sure if
But
that's
as you,
clear.
as you expand and do what you say, if they want to build a fifth barn, they can't go back to the third and fourth barn to adjust that distance.
Right, so when the third barn was applied for, again, it was not an expansion, it would be considered as a full barn, a brand new barn. So they don't get the reduction in the MDS requirement. But the total number of units, in this case, the required setback for the red line is 1,624 feet. Let's say when they built the third barn, I could look it up to see what it exactly was, but maybe it was 1,400 feet or 1,200 feet. Well, 1,200 feet from the number 3 barn is less than the distance to your house and the neighboring property. So the MDS met. There's no requirement for a setback. So that's why at that time that building permit was issued.
So my main concern, now that I know what these circles are, is basically the smell. When number 1 and 2 were built, they were northeast of our house, so we very seldom smelled it except if there was a northeast wind. Now that number 3 is full of chickens, the smell is far worse. And because this north wind, which is quite more common than a northeast wind, affects us more, and this is going to affect us more because now a northwest wind is going to affect us. Is that taken into consideration too or not?
Through your chair, as far as I'm aware, the location of the barn in reference to the house is not considered as part of the MDS calculation, whether you're east of, or, you know, if your prevailing wind is from the west, you know, if your house is east of a barn, you know, you're going to get a lot more smell, but the location of that barn. So if your house is 1,500 feet from a barn, you get the same required setback as somebody on the north, east, or west side of the barn. That location is not factored in to the MDS calculation. It's just a total calculation for the number of animal units, regardless of which direction you're in.
Another consideration is flies that come from that facility. Is there something that can be done about that?
Through your chair, that would not be a part of the MDS requirement for this. And again, MDS is in regards to odor from neighboring properties. If there's a concern, Ministry of Agriculture, if you have a nutrient management or farm practice concern, like if you believe that they're doing something they're not supposed to be in their farm, you can speak with the Ministry of Agriculture, and they will do, site inspections on barns to determine if they're following required animal practice. Other than that, that's outside of the municipal jurisdiction.
So you can't do anything about flies,
No.
even though they produce lots and lots of manure. The other main concern I have is property value and future of our property, that because of these chicken barns across the road. Like, it's not just the 4 across the road, it's the 4 down the road and 3 more on the way to Ayton. I mean, there's 55,000 chickens in each one of these buildings, so that's 220,000 across the road, plus 220,000 down the road, plus pullets to replace all of them. Is there a limit where this can stop, or is it just keep going?
Yeah, through your chair. So the municipality has no limit through our zoning for the number of animals that are permitted within a certain radius of a house or on a certain property. Again, all new applications would require nutrient management strategies that dictate, how they're spreading their manure or where they're storing it and how it's being processed and moved and from one farm to the next. That is all done again through the Ministry of Agriculture. They are required to submit that approval from the Ministry of Agriculture as part of their building permit application to confirm that it's been done. But outside of that, the municipality has no control over that specifically, outside of the requirement that they have ag approval.
One comment I want you to answer too. You said that barn number 3 was considered a new
Yes.
when there was 2 barns there already, or how do you figure that?
Again, the new versus expanded is only in relation to the farm operation itself, and the structure has to be built within 3 years. So depending on when the original structure was built versus the new structure, if that was in 3 years, then it would have been considered all new versus expansion. Again, they get a reduction if it's considered expansion versus new. So the fact that if it was considered new actually makes that MDS setback larger versus an expansion would reduce the required setback. I'm not 100% sure whether the third was considered new versus expansion, but again, based on the number of animal units being 25% less, assuming that all 4 barns hold the same number of animals, their MDS setback would have been 25% less. So it would have been outside of the required setback to your property, as well as the required setback to the neighboring property to the west. Okay.
Sir. Apologize. Any other comments from anybody live in attendance here? No? Okay, ma'am, I'll go back to you. Go ahead, please.
Hi, thank you. Just hoping you can help me understand the expansion process a little more. Forgive me, I'm just learning about it recently, so I do have some questions. So when considering it an expansion and you're assessing the number of animals, are you looking at the number of total animals in that farm or the number of animals that are housed in the new expansion barns?
When we're doing MDS calculation, we're always doing total number of animals.
Okay, that's good to know. I had one more question. Earlier, my brother asked you about the municipal regulations around building houses in relationship to buildings on neighboring properties. And I heard you say information about building a barn.
Excuse me, ma'am. We went offline there real quick. We want to start over because we lost you for about maybe 3-4 seconds there.
Sure. Can you hear me now?
Yes, absolutely. But it just missed maybe 4 or 5 words. Go ahead,
Okay, I'll
please.
repeat myself. Thanks. So I just wanted to go back to what my brother was saying. He'd asked you about considerations for future builds on our neighboring property and how the barns on the property, the proposed barns may impact our future plans. You said barns follow the same regulations, and you said house to house, there's a number of regulations, but I didn't hear you talk about a distance for building a new house with a consideration of a barn on a neighboring property. Can you tell me more about that?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So currently the West Grey zoning bylaw. So when we consider building new houses in relation to their requirement to set back from a house to a barn, that we call an MDS 1. So our current zoning bylaw exempts MDS 1 calculations for all new residential buildings. So there is no requirement to do an MDS calculation when somebody's building a new house under our current zoning bylaw. Some bylaws do require to work both ways so that a house is required to set back from a barn the same way. The current West Grey bylaw does not.
Oh, I wonder, have you explored that? How would I get more information about this? I'm curious because if you're allowed to build a house anywhere, and I don't know, it seems like there should be more information available to the public about this. How could I go about finding it?
Sorry, through you, Chair. So MDS calculation and all the MDS information, there is a website through the Ministry of Agriculture. You can look all that up. So like, again, MDS 2 is requirements for a setback for a new barn to an existing dwelling. MDS 1 is the requirements for setbacks from a house, for a new house to an existing barn. I will say that we do MDS 1 calculations on any new severances. So if somebody's submitting an application for a severance to sever an existing lot, they would be required to do an MDS 1 calculation as part of that severance application process. So the MDS 1 in our zoning bylaw is exempt for any property that predates the date of the existing zoning bylaw, which is, I believe, is 2006.
Oh, okay. So if we were to sever the property at some point in the future, there may be some challenges in building new houses there. Is that correct?
That is a possibility. Yeah. When you do a severance, you're required to meet that MDS 1 calculation. I will say the calculation is slightly smaller than the requirement for an MDS 2. So it's not the exact same number both ways, just so you and the committee is aware.
Okay.
But it's basically through the planning, we look at it as a first come, first serve. So if the barn's there first, you as the new severed lot would have to meet the requirement. If the lot was there already, then the barn would have to meet that setback.
Okay. It sounds like there might be some real value implications to our neighboring property. Thank you for sharing that.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public or agents on this application? One more, sir. You're gonna have to go the mic. Just the reason is because anybody attending virtually, and we do record, so because we value what you're gonna say here. So I just push the button and the floor is yours.
So just getting back to say more expansion. So if I was following you right, so there is no limit. They could keep building on that property. Unlimited units, like, is that the case? Like they could fill that whole farm up with chicken barns?
In theory, yes, that's true. There's a maximum lot coverage in our zoning bylaw. I believe it's 15%. So, I mean, that's a very large number on a 100-acre lot.
But they're probably close to 15% right now.
Yeah.
Out of 100 acres, the driveway and the barns and the manure storage and.
Yeah, driveways wouldn't count. It's
They
just structures.
Structures.
Just structures themselves. So, yeah, that 15% is it's a fairly large number on 100 acres, but like 100 acres, so 15 acres, technically 15%, right? So that's a lot of building. But they are required, again, through nutrient management strategy and things like that. They are required to be able to deal with the manure that's generated from that farm.
Right.
They have to have the property available to be able to distribute and store that manure
Right,
that's
but that
generated.
sort of does nothing to do with the intensity, say on that farm. You can deal with the nutrient issues on a base of land. But that farm could have a super intense, it could have a bunch more barns on it. And, by the sound of it, like there's nothing in your bylaws that would, sort of slow that down or say you can't have another 200,000 birds on there unless you meet this 15%. And you're saying the 15% is calculated by actually the square footage of the buildings. That's it. Yeah. So then it would take a lot of buildings to fill 15 acres.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, theoretically, a farmer could put all their barns and on one property and then ship all their manure to other properties.
Right.
Likely that's not usually what happens. I mean, farmers are, they're business operators just like everybody else, and they do things the most economical way. And likely, they'll build one barn on each property because then they can easily distribute the manure on the property. The barn itself is it's just more economical and practical that way. And in my experience, that's generally the way the property owners do it. Again, any new barns would again accumulate the total number of animals. Again, would increase that radius by more and more every time they add more animals. Now, theoretically, they could move the barn further and further back from the existing houses to meet that same to meet the expanding radius. In this case, because building 3 was already existence and they wanted to build building 4, because they connect those buildings through conveyor belts, in this case, they couldn't move the location of building 4 because building 3 already existed. So in the
Right.
future, if they were building a 5 and a 6, they could move it further back, technically. But again, that total volume now becomes all the barns buildings together for the total number of, so that radius would expand even further.
Yeah. And another question, so you say there's no kind of what Matt was bringing up. There's no kind of regulation, like whether it's provincial or municipal, to have to do with, just smell and how, like, certain barns, maybe the chicken barns don't smell as much as pig barns, but is there there's no kind of regulation or study or some measure that you guys can use to say, if we allow this operation to expand this much, it's going to, every neighboring person is going to smell this for the rest of their life? Like, is there any kind of in either municipal or provincial?
Well, that's what these MDS guidelines are. That's the
Right,
provincial.
but there's no measure to it. There's no saying, like the MDS, like you're saying, I realize that, one barn has a certain distance and more animal units have more distance, which kind of logically means, yep, they have to be further away from residences. But yeah, I'm thinking there's no kind of measure or calculation that is used in that other than just the MDS distances themselves. Like somebody's calculated these somehow, I guess.
Yeah, these MDS calculations were generated by the province and this is how they determined that X number of chickens or cows or pigs are required to be X number of feet.
They have some kind of formula.
That's
they
the
figure out.
formula that they provided, and the municipalities were required to incorporate them in their zoning bylaws.
Right.
And that's why the province has allowed through the minor variance process to vary those required setbacks in circumstances where, it's just not possible to meet that required setback.
So each municipality, you follow the provincial regulations, but then you can impose your own bylaws if you see fit for certain circumstances, or how does that work?
So through you, Chair. So we follow our MDS calculation is based on, there's a provincial, they provide software to the municipalities, they provide software to designers and nutrient management strategists and people who do this for a living, and they input all the information. It's the same formula used across the province, but it does allow municipalities through their committee of adjustments to make minor changes if required by the property owners or if requested.
Right. I'm just curious. So say you're in, whether it's West Gray or not, say you're in you're against like a town of Hanover and you want to build a bunch of chicken barns. Is there different rules being close to a town center than say in a rural area with regard to the MDS setbacks?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So there is what we call a type A land use versus a type B land use. So there's different definitions based on that, and different calculations depend on. So an individual residence on a rural property is a type A land use. If you get to a hamlet or a town with 3 residential units within a certain area, so that's it's a density calculation, they classify that as a type B land use. And the type B land use would have a different calculation. It's more a larger setback.
Right.
And things, some industrial and commercial uses are incorporated in those type B land uses. So it just depends what the land use is, but all the land uses in this area would be a type A.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to go to Member Hutchinson. You had a comment, sir? Go ahead.
No, I had a question, but it's been answered by our building person.
Thank you. Any other comments or questions on this application? Okay. Oh, we lost my line there. You here, still there, Member Townsend?
I am here.
Okay, yeah, I just screen went off. That's good. Want to make sure you can still hear us.
Yeah, no, I'm good. I do have a question though.
Yes, go ahead, sir.
So I guess our main thing right now is there is some question about the MDS, the line, the red line, the magic red line of 150 feet, whether it's measured correctly to the barn or whether it's measured to the house. There seems to be a discrepancy as to that MDS line at this point, from what I'm taking from everyone's conversations. Is that correct?
I'm gonna go to CBO Shipwreck for that. For clarity, again, we use the county's mapping is what I heard, so anyways. CBO Shipwreck.
Yes, thank you, through you, Chair. So I can't confirm that the exact number that the 150-foot reduction to the 1,622 feet. So do the math there, we're about 1480, 1470 is what the projected setback is set at. I can't confirm that that's exactly 1480 or within, 100 feet either way. I don't know. We based it, the applicant provided the information and we based it on that, reviewing it through the MDS calculation. The MDS is not, the GIS mapping on the county is not 100%. It's an aerial photo. I would suggest that we would be within, 50 feet one way or the other based on the mapping, assuming we pick the right location. I'm looking at the aerial photograph here from the GIS. It's hard to say exactly when you're comparing it back and forth to the drawing that was submitted by the applicant, whether they picked the house or the barn. I don't know, again, but I would say, again, would it be within a couple 100 feet maximum one way or the other would be the difference in the setback.
Thank you. That answer your question there, Member Townsend?
Yeah, yes, it does, Chair, but it does raise the question as to 100 feet to the neighbors make a big difference as opposed to, and then if we start again tightening up these circles and setting a precedent that we cut down the MDS so much, again, it raises concerns of how close we're building these barns to existing homes. So I have a concern with that.
Go ahead.
And thank you, through you, Chair. So I would say that the proposed setback is the number that's being submitted by the applicant. So they are suggesting to reduce that number by 150 feet. So if the barn to house setback requires a larger setback, no difference than if somebody's submitting an application for a minor variance to reduce their side yard setback. So if they say they want a side yard setback reduced to 5 feet and they sue, well, our drawing showed 4 feet, but like from an aerial photo or so 4 feet, they can't just automatically build 4 feet, right? They're requesting 5 feet. That's the maximum they're allowed to do. In this case, they're reducing the 1622 by 150 feet. So their maximum distance from the proposed barn to that house that they would be permitted would be 1622 by 150. So they would have to meet that setback. If it's determined that their proposed location is less than that, or in this case, I guess more than that, they would not be permitted to build the structure. They have to meet their requested reduction in the setback. So you're approving. Which will be
Sir, I do need you to, can you just wait 1 second, because I do have a member asking the questions, and then I'll call on you, but they'll have to kind of work together here. CBO Shipwreck continues.
Right, sorry, so their request is for that number, they have to meet that request. So again, we can ask for them to do GIS or even on-site, surveying to determine that from the house, they could go to the property, use their surveying equipment and determine what that exact setback is. We can do that through the building permit application process to make sure that no difference than if somebody says, I want a side yard setback of 3 feet and the required setback is 3 feet. We say, well, you have to confirm that you are at 3 feet because 3 foot minus 1 inch is not permitted and 3 feet is okay. So when you're getting that close in the required setback, we do ask them to have a survey and to pin those footings. So and to do that. So we can do that in this case to confirm that they would meet the 1,622 minus 150 in this case.
Okay, thank you, CPO Shilgrave. Does that answer your question now, Member Townsend? There's obviously a few
Yes,
added.
yes, it does. It gives me some more comfort that they'll at least be stuck to the numbers that they've put in place. And if they miscalculate it and went off a barn instead of a house that's closer, they're going to have to adjust their building.
Exactly. Thank you. Sir, I'll go back over to you. You have to use the mic again. Go ahead.
And that answered my question. That was my, is that the next step, is to just verify this separation distance with, you know, a good amount of accuracy. So, thank you.
Go. Thank you. And I apologize for having to go back to the mic, but anybody's attending virtually, they can't hear you. So want to make sure that everybody can hear, and we are recording. So anybody had any questions, and we value everybody's comments and questions for sure. Okay, is there any other comments or questions? Member Eccles, go ahead, please. And then I am going to probably be looking for a vote on this.
Thank you. So we've got the red line, which is saying the nearest neighbor derelict unused house. I think we're all agreeable to that at the present moment. Is the house in that wooded area?
Yeah, the house.
If you, yeah, I just want to know, I mean, looking at either you or Matt, who lives there, I've been by there, but I can't really.
Yeah, so the house, by my estimate, would be approximately 100 feet to the east of that barn, in the middle of the sort of circled area that's within that red
Where the
circle.
red line is.
Yes.
That's
The house is not visible because it's treed over. The house is not visible in that picture right
Picture.
there. Yeah.
And I guess that's what I'm, you know, being more concerned with is, are we taking the number off of what isn't actually? And in this case, we're trying to make an approximation, make a decision. Is it a minor variance or isn't it a minor variance?
Well, it's going to be closer.
Well, and that's my point now,
Yeah.
instead of being, you know, asking
But-
for 150 feet.
By my estimation,
estimating
it's
for
probably
250?
100 feet, but until it's, you know, like I just went on Google Earth and looked at it and drew a line and getting on phones there, but yeah, the residence, the dwelling is located approximately 100 feet east of that barn, which is where I think the MDS circle kind of touches. So that's my impression, is that it will move, that distance will be closer.
And that's where
What-
it gives me some grave concern.
Yeah, which is, you know, if it is verified, like that would be my next request, is that what is the actual distance?
Go ahead, Carl. Running out of mics here. Okay, Carl, you do have a response to your hand. Go up. Go ahead, sir.
Okay, I think there's just a small little bit amount of confusion. So the red line that's on the drawing, the previous drawing that was shown, that's the required setback from the property to the south. So that red line is not indicating what the required setback is to that house. It just happens to be the same. So it's a little confusion there. So I don't know if you want to, sorry, I had Ashley bring up this photo just to show where they're showing the dwelling, right? You can see, I don't know if you can zoom in at all, but there's the barn on the drawing that's on there. You can see the barn and the house in that wooded area. I don't know if you can see it, but the barn's here, and the house, according to this, is in that location. Barn house, and this is our drawing. This is what Mr. Smith used in his calculation. So when he was reviewing it, he was using the correct number or the correct location. But if we could bring up the last the site plan from the application. Okay, so looking at this drawing, see the red line that goes through the house that's labeled type A, nearest neighbor, derelict, unused house? That is the required setback from the property to the south. So that's the required setback from this house. This circle goes around this house. So that, it just happens that that's right in the right spot. But this circle here, the purple and the red, I know you can't hear it. The purple and the red, that's the setback from this house.
Okay, do you have another comment or question, sir?
Well, it's still, yeah. That was my interpretation of it as well, but I'm saying if we move that red circle that's going through our farm property there, if we move that to the right, approximately 100 feet, it's going to decrease that MDS from the dwelling.
Yes, it would, if they're assuming that that dimension is from that location where the purple is shown. Again, when we did our review and calculation, we used the correct location, in my opinion. And again, we're reducing, or the committee, if they so choose, would reduce the required setback by 150 feet. So they would be required to meet that setback of 15, whatever, 1622 minus
Minus 150.
150. They're required to meet that setback. If they submitted the wrong number and they can't make that work, then they would have to resubmit a new application and start the process over again. And we can confirm that through the building permit process. We can ask them to have a survey done to confirm that location.
So that is the next to verify that setback distance. That is the next, like, so they apply for a permit, you need verification of that distance. Is that how that works?
Yes, we can do that. Yep.
Okay.
Thank you. Michaelis over here. Yes. Anything else, sir? I just want to make sure that we've answered.
Yep, I think so.
No
Thank you.
comments or
Yep.
concerns and questions? Will you just click that mic there? You're answered there. Member Hutch, of course. Member Shea, go ahead. Anything else, go?
I think you said, Carl, that the planner or the builder or the applicant has access to the MDS information and calculation. And when they submit an application, they design the building, barn 4 in this case, to meet the requirements, that they don't just submit something willy-nilly and then ask us to do the math for them. So they submitted this application recognizing that they needed a 150-foot variance, at least, because they believed that was a derelict building. That's how they described it on their application. So I think if I was planning this barn and I realized I was 150 feet short of a derelict building, I would come in and ask for permission to have that adjusted, because nobody's going to really care. If the building is in fact not derelict, it's in the process of being reconstructed, et cetera, I think they might have designed their application differently. So I'm sort of leaning in favor of not approving this, because for a couple of reasons. It doesn't meet the MDS requirements. They designed the project with some apparently false assumptions in mind. And you've indicated that they have a 3-year window at which point they will no longer be required to be compliant with this regulation anyway. So it's not like we're slamming the door on them. We're just saying it's not going to be approved currently because it doesn't meet the requirements. The requirements are put in there for reasons of, mitigating smell and impact on neighbors. The neighbors are here to say that they're concerned. So I think we should sort of honor the rationale behind the MDS requirements. Thank you.
Okay, any other comments or questions? I'm gonna almost take that as a motion there, Member Shea, but I want to make sure that we've all comments or questions. I am gonna close the comment period here, and then we're gonna move on to a decision by the committee. And if you'd like, I will come back to you. Any other comments or questions? And then I am going to the vote because I think that's pretty close to a motion. Go ahead.
So we've got the circles. We've got the circles. Is it on the circumference of the circle are we looking for? Because I always thought MDS was a direct line.
Yeah, it would be a radius from the house, so it creates a circle around the house.
Creates a circle around the house, but on the, what we're using is a circle in that the documents that were submitted by the, whether it's DOMS or Fisher Poultry. It's using a circle, and it says approximately 1,472 to barn B on that circle. The other one, which is to Matt's house, is to the nearest neighbor is 1,586, 36 feet short of what it is. Did they use that? Is that a direct line number? Or is that around the circumference of this circle? Because that changes it, in my mind, dramatically when the numbers come in. I would think it would be a straight line, but
Yes, that's correct. It's a straight line directly from the house to the nearest corner of the new barn.
aren't. Okay. Start to. Yeah. Give me a bit of a time to think about that one. I know we're going to vote.
Yes, it is. This will be the final comment, though. Member Hutchinson, because we do need to, we're going to keep going around here because we're concerned about a couple of red lines, which I think we all are. So go ahead, sir.
So my question is, so if we pass this, with the amendment, and they go to the building, stage, and they find that their calculations are not quite right, they therefore could move the barn back to meet the amendment, right? So they could still go ahead with the project, by adjusting where they're building the barns, right? So we're just giving them the approval to go ahead and build as somewhere, right? Basically, not any closer, put it that way.
Yeah, through chair. So what you're basically doing is you're approving that you would allow a distance of 1,472 feet from that barn from the new barn, the closest corner to the existing house. So they would have to be 1,472 feet from the house to the barn. And I'm not sure how they did their calculation and whether they've built in call it a fudge factor or not, or whether they have done the exact number. If they've done the exact number and they've determined that they've used the wrong structure, well, then they will have to adjust their barn. They would either have to move it back or wait the full 3 years or submit a new minor variance application. They would have 3 choices in that case. Through the process that we discussed to date with the applicant, moving the location of the barn was not feasible in their estimation. It was not ideal for them, so they chose not to go that road and they chose to apply. Now, maybe even with the 150 reduction, maybe that would work for them, even if it doesn't give them their full relief that they're looking for. I can't speak for them, but yeah, they would be required to meet that 1,472 foot setback from the existing house, not the location on this map, from the actual existing house.
Right, and then when they come in for the permit, it's going to be checked. Is what that's okay. Just so everyone's clear on that too. Pardon me? Yeah, and then and then I'm going to come back to you because I do want to get the decision made here.
Carl, could you pull up that original map and show how it's a straight line from the house to the red line which dissects the barn? I think there's still some ambiguity about that.
So this is the house in question. This red line here is the 1,644 feet, right, that goes to barn 4. So from that corner right there to this house, they're asking for 1,472 feet. The direct line from here straight across to there. 1,470 feet. Again, if we allow, if the council's or chair or the committee so chooses to make the amendment, they would be required to meet 472 from the existing house as it exists, not based on what this map shows.
Right.
Then that's where the confusion is the house closer? And that's where my confusion is the house closer? It's not 1472 because they're using, from local knowledge, they're using the barn, not the house. So it's 1372, 250. And that's where I'm, now, is that what we would call a minor variance? In my mind, that's what we're voting on. Can we give it a minor variance at 150 feet? Possibly I could, but if it gets to 250 or 300 feet, because we're using the wrong building for that 1472, that changes it dramatically in my mind. Is there a chance that we can defer until we get more clarification on this?
Okay, Michael, again. So I was gonna go over to, we can defer, that's, I was gonna go to you, we were talking about, acknowledge that you want a motion. Now I've got a defer that's been kind of presented, so. Is that a possibility? For clarity. But check with.
Yeah, I'll make a motion we defer this to the next week, to the next meeting to get clarification.
Pardon me?
It's not a big.
No debate. I'm saying I was gonna come back to you. That's all.
I think we can.
I was gonna go.
Go to the Director of Legislative Services. He hasn't even got he hasn't got anything to say yet. That makes sense.
Check it here.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So, Member Shea, I did hear him say that it's not debatable, and that's true insofar as you can't debate whether or not to defer. You can have a discussion as to the date for deferral if you want to put a date on that. That would be appropriate, if you will. I think for staff, if committee could provide some clarity with respect to the reason for the deferral and what you hope to see back out of this, that will help us bring forward something more robust for the next meeting so that we can ensure that all the questions have been answered.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is we've got a request for referral by Member Echols. We're gonna ask for a date and the reason. If you could summarize those, the staff can record it and we can get the vote.
Well, the deferral is, there seems to be a lot of confusion whether we're pinging on the barn, that the older barn structure that's on the neighboring property, and or the house. And there's a distance between those, and there's, in my mind, that turns it from being a minor variance. We use where we believe the actual house is from some of the discussion today. That's why I want to have complete that we're doing the distance on where the house is, because I haven't got clarity of where it actually is. I know that there's an old derelict house there, but you drive by it at or below the speed limit going down Concession 8 always, of knowing where that is. So I would like to defer it to the next meeting, which would be, Jamie.
September 2, 2025.
So we don't have one in August? Well, to the next meeting, September 2 it isn't it?
So defer to the September 2nd meeting, and you want a more better confirmation on what the actual radius is and what they're paying from what corner to what corner.
Yep.
It's essentially what you're after.
Yes.
Go ahead, Doug.
I thought our stand-in planner said that they, from their measurements, they did use the house based on your map. From your measurements, is that not correct?
So through the chair, member Eccles has made a motion to defer. So respectfully, the debate on this is not really permitted, but the chair would need a seconder to continue.
That's where I was going. So, right. So I was just talking to member Eccles. So he stands, yes, he made a motion that we defer to this September meeting now. He stated his reason. Now I need a seconder, please, oh, okay. Thank you, member Townsend, online, sir.
No problem.
And I don't believe it's debatable. So we call the vote then on the deferral. Okay, so we're calling on a deferral to the September 2nd on this matter only. All those in favor, please just raise your hands. This is defer it. Raise your hands higher so I can see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 in favor. Those opposed, please raise your hand. 2 opposed. The motion is carried 5-2. So we will defer this item to the next meeting. And that concludes that application. Again, back to September the 2nd is our next meeting. Okay. And I do believe that completes everything that was on our agenda today, folks. We don't need to worry about next steps. We deferred it. Next meeting, like we stated, Tuesday, September the 2nd at 2 p.m. And as chair, I will declare that all items on today's agenda have been completed and we have no other items before us. And I will say that we stand adjourned at 3:31